Okay, so to make chicken and dumplings, the way that my great-grandmother from Hartley, Delaware area did, we are gonna start out with a roasting chicken, and I like to put it in my turkey roaster so we have plenty of room for chicken and dumplings, or just for the dumplings after the chicken's out of the roaster. So I like to kind of go a little oversized on my roaster size. We've let that cook for 2 hours already this morning at 350. And I like, in my roaster, when I first get my chicken started, I usually just start out with heavy salt and pepper and poultry seasoning and almost a whole stick of butter. So that's usually how I start out. The chicken's now done, so he's been pulled from the roaster and sitting here. So now we're gonna work on our dough for our dumplings. My grandmother liked the butter flavored crystal dough. I usually just use the plain kind. This is gonna make the dough for our dumplings. So I think with all these old recipes, the fewer ingredients, the better. You know, there are some families that like to add onions in theirs. There are some families that I've seen when they talk about their recipe, they'll add chicken stock to theirs. We don't add anything. Sometimes for a little extra flavor, I will add the giblets packet into my roaster water. Sometimes that gives your essence a little bit more flavor, but it's not necessary. So we're just gonna crumble this up. This meal takes a while to make usually. The chicken, like I said, has already been in the oven for 2 hours. And my potatoes are boiling. I've already peeled my potatoes. They're boiling now, separate on the stove. All I do is usually add salt to the potatoes. And the dumplings take about an hour or so to roll. So you are looking at several hours of cook time. Some families like to do the Annie Ann dumplings, like those frozen dumplings. I don't really care for them, but I do know that a lot of families substitute them out. You're gonna wanna just keep adding warm water, and I usually just let my water run, and it gets really messy, but we're just gonna keep adding warm water until we get a nice soft ball of dough that's fairly sticky, but and then we'll flour down our surface. Cautious that you don't add too much water. If you do, you can always add a little bit more flour again. I think that's what I'm probably going to have to do. So I've added a little too much water. If you do, again, no problem. Just sprinkle the whole thing with more flour. That we want it, okay? Just take your time, add a little bit of warm water as you go. Don't add too much at any one time, and just keep working with it. Just keep squeezing it through your fingers until your consistency is about like this, okay? So next thing, I'm gonna clean off my hands here. We need a very floured surface. Obviously, we've sanitized our surface first. So we are going to make sure that none of this sticks to our counter. Okay, nice floured surface. Get this ball of dough out. I sometimes will let it rest for a little while covered. But what you want to do is just, again, keep it from sticking to this counter. Roll it around a little bit like this. And this takes practice. If you have not done this before and it's sticking to the counter or it's sticking to your hands too much, the more mess you make, the better you end up making out. So you want to make sure that you have plenty of flour and you take your time with your water. So this is looking good now. So I'll let this rest for a little while. If I want to add more flour on top, I can. But I usually just cover it with my mixing bowl for 15 or 20 minutes, and then I come back to it when I'm ready to roll. My family always used this wooden rolling pin, and this was my grandmother's, but you want to just, any kind of rolling pin. I haven't looked at rolling pins lately, but if you're using a plastic one, just make sure that it's easily coated in flour, okay? So we'll come back in about 15 minutes and we'll use that rolling pin and get our dumplings going. Okay, so we've let our dough sit for about 15 minutes and rest, covered. I've got my old antique rolling pin that belonged to my great-grandmother, so I've got it nice and dusted. I suggest just keeping the flour right here close to you because you're going to need it. You're also going to want a small paring knife. Okay, so now we're ready to roll our dumplings. So we can start off again by just making sure this dough is nice and ready, looks good. Keeping your surface really well floured is the key to this, okay? If anything starts sticking, just add more flour. And like I said, you know, we've been doing this a long time. It does take a little bit of practice, but basically you're going to want to just do a section at a time. And if you want, you can even tear this in half. I usually keep mine together, but you want your dumplings to be really thin. So keep your flour handy and just keep coming out towards yourself or pushing away. When you get it nice and thin, and you know, if your flour is, or if your surface is too over floured, it'll just keep springing back. So if you you just kind of work with what you got here. You can make a little pile and smooth it out, get some out of your way. But you want this nice and thin. And there's really no hurry. All the dumplings will sit in the pot together, and even the first ones will taste as good as the last ones that you put in. So this is what we do. So we're gonna get this nice and thin. They really don't taste as good if they're thick. So just be patient with yourself. I usually use this as my kind of my line, and then you just take your paring knife and start cutting like this. Okay. Now on the stove, I have my roaster with my essence. I like to put enough water in the roaster at the beginning so that I do not have to add a box stock or water. That really ruins the flavor that you're getting from cooking the chicken, right? So the poultry seasoning, the salt, the pepper, the butter in the roaster when the chicken first goes in the oven, that's like the base flavors for your dumplings. So you don't want to dilute that or water that down if you don't have to. So start off with a little bit more water than you need versus too little water. But over here, we've got the roaster on 2 burners. That's why I said earlier, it's really nice if you use the turkey-sized roaster so that the dumplings have plenty of room in the pot. So we're gonna uncover our roaster here. And I've got it, like I said, I've got it turned on 2 burners. It's bubbling. You're gonna wanna make sure that you've got a nice wooden spoon ready. And the flavors look good. If you wanna add more poultry seasoning, you can. But if you have a nice dark broth, then you're good to go. So once you get your first group of dumplings rolled out, just peel them off one at a time and throw them in. And you're gonna wanna keep your burner temperature at about medium. None of this process do you wanna rush. If your burner's too hot, they'll all stick to the bottom and burn. They'll burn quickly. If you get a couple dumplings that are too thick, just kind of give them a tug and make them a little thinner, okay? And just keep stirring as you go. If you get one that's really thick, you can grab your rolling pin again and make it a little thinner. They really taste good when they're a little thin. And then you want to just keep stirring, medium heat here so nothing burns, and just keep stirring them. And basically you just go through your whole dough ball here, just gradually getting them in there. Okay, so I have rolled all of my dough. They are all in the roaster here. I've stirred the whole time so nothing stuck to the bottom. My heat stayed on low or medium at the very hottest, especially if you're slow at rolling. This does get thicker over time, so you can see how really thick it is. It's perfect. If it was any thicker at all, I would maybe add a little bit of water. If it was what I thought maybe too thin, you can always make a thickening, like maybe a cup of flour with warm water and a fork, and whip it so it's really, really thin, and then you can just drizzle it in. And again, this is just if it ends up looking too thin. That's a thickening agent that will fix it if it does look too thin. But this is fantastic. This is about how we want them. They smell good. If you want to taste one, you can add more salt or more poultry seasoning to taste, but I would definitely taste it before you add any more. These are really looking good. Okay, so we've finished our meal. We really should have a green vegetable on this plate too. Just for this demonstration, we didn't do the full plate, but we have roasted chicken here, we have mashed potatoes and dumplings. And once you get your dumplings to the thickness that you like, go ahead and turn off your heat and mash your potatoes. I like just salt and pepper and butter and milk in my mashed potatoes, and I usually whip them with a hand mixer. I don't always use my potato masher. We like a mixed or a whipped potato, but there you go. There's your Sussex County authentic chicken and dumplings, minus the green vegetable.